Traffic, where it went. 95 actually. There was an accident at mile 47. It slowed things down, and usually it takes me an hour and 15 minutes.
There's an accident heading south. I mean north.
Heading south.
Heading south.
Yeah.
I'll let Jackie know.
Yeah.
All right. Good morning and welcome to night session 5 with Angela Lee, as you just met. So she'll be back in just a few minutes. Let's go ahead and get started. As always, we're going to start with our mission 5 today. So everybody take out your pamphlet and let's take a look at mission 5. Let's see how we've been doing. So today's 5 out of 12, so almost halfway through a night. So by now you've kind of figured out the trends, you figured out the schedule, you figured out the expectations. So did we all learn in the first or second night class the 10-4? The daily 10-4? Does everybody know what that is?
No.
Does anybody know what that is?
10 contacts, 10 calls.
My tracker.
Yeah, it's in my tracker, right, Dan? Yeah, thank you. So it's contacts, calls, notes, and previews, right?
I left my binder on the kitchen table. Are there any I could just peek at? Or
I would recommend you sit beside somebody.
Yes,
There are extras in the office next door, but they're going to need a batch number to write in.
I won't write in there. I just want to see what I'll follow.
If you wanted to go next door, or you can just sit beside somebody, that might be easier for today. I'll leave it up to you.
Where's the office?
In the Lisa's and Beth's office next door.
Next door.
The big building.
Yeah.
Okay. So are we doing the whole purpose of this 10-4 is to start doing real estate activities, right? Making phone calls, making contacts, writing handwritten letters, and adding people to your database. So that's where everybody gets started in real estate, is by building and then systematically touching your database. What database am I referring to? Command. Right? Do we all have access to Command? We've all logged in and at least played around a little bit? Still waiting on access? Okay, and you're working with Heather to get all your, okay.
Yep.
Okay. So, yeah, reminder, first 2 weeks, we'll wait to get you access.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So, did we all bring note cards today? We talked about that. Okay, so a lot more yeses than I did on Monday. All right, that's good. What's the purpose of having note cards in class with us?
It's a nice touch.
To follow up after phone call.
That we talked to.
To write notes to the people that you talk to during your time of lead generation, whether it be today and at night, or this afternoon, or tonight or tomorrow, whenever that you're doing your lead generation. That's a nice second touch, right? So what do I mean when I say touch? Somebody help me out.
Contacts.
What's that?
It can be contact like an email or a phone call or in-person conversation.
Right.
Door knock.
Right, exactly. So presumably you're all starting with your sphere of influence, people that you know, and you're going to initiate your first touch to them by letting them know, hey, I'm in real estate. I got this new job, blah, 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 blah. You're right, you're going to follow the script. Then you're going to repeatedly touch them over and over again in a systematic way so that they don't forget you're in real estate, and that when they are ready to buy or sell, or they know somebody that's ready to buy or sell, they're going to think of you because you've been touching them 36 times a year, right? 36 touch. So you're going to utilize commands to manage that tracking. So the phone call is number 1. You write them a letter, that's number 2. You do a social media post, you do a text message, you invite them to an event. These are all touches along the way. Okay? So just kind of keep that in mind. Having the note cards and writing letters isn't just to punish you and see how pretty your cursive is. There's a reason behind it. So bring your note cards. We talked about this last class. If you wanted to go get printed your own personalized note cards, that's your prerogative, or go to the 99-cent store and get a cute kitten right on the front of a card and write them a card. You get 100 of them for $1, right? So if you want to save some expenses until you start having some real estate income roll in, that's a great alternative. All right, study your local market statistics. Who did this between the start of Ignite and today? Who has studied their local market statistics? Nobody?
There's some local snaps on the Kelly app.
Some local stuff. So talk to us more about that, Kelly.
If you go on the Kelly app, you can like say find the local snap for my area, and it'll bring up like what has sold in the area and what's on sale.
Right. On Monday, we all took out our phones and we all downloaded the KW app and Kelly. One of the really cool features of Kelly is it makes knowing your market statistics very, very easy. Because you just tell Kelly to snap a zip code or snap a town, and she'll give you all the market statistics. Average sales price, number of homes listed, number of homes sold. All right, and then you can use that when you're talking to your clients. All right, it's going to create more knowledge for you and more knowledge that you can convey to your clients to show your value. So it's important for you to know your market. Now, everybody's market may be a little different, right? So who here works in Greater Portland, primarily? Okay, who works somewhere other than Greater Portland? Where do you work?
Wiscasset, Bath, Brunswick.
Right.
Mid-coast.
So you should be telling Kelly to snap Wiscasset and know what's going on in Wiscasset specifically. So that when people are talking about the market, well, what market are you talking about? Right? It's specific. What did you work in a different market, Kelly?
I just looked up in Portland, the average home price is like $45. But I do Westbrook and South Portland and Cumberland too.
Perfect. Okay, so know all your markets, right? And here's the cool thing with Command, and one of its new features with Kelly is you can get even more specific than just a zip code. So previously, and on the MLS, you can find market statistics for zip codes. Now you can narrow in even further. And let's say you're in Portland and you want to know what the market stats are for the Eastern Promenade. You can now select that neighborhood and look at your market statistics. So might that be valuable information for you to know when you're talking to a buyer that wants to buy on the Eastern Promenade? And you know the average sales price is $834 and the average days on market is 28. Is that valuable information? So study your market, whatever that market is. Practice scripts with a partner. Who's been practicing their scripts? Show of hands. That's almost all of you.
Does it say not available for average days on market on Kelly for anyone else? Or it doesn't say what the deal on those. You get it? No.
Is that just for one neighborhood?
I tried.
It's different for different neighborhoods.
I tried a few separate.
Yeah, I'll be the first to tell you, Command and Kelly are a little bit glitchy right now. There's some things that aren't necessarily working, things don't necessarily save all the time, so just kind of bear with it. It's brand new technology that launched 4 weeks ago, and it's literally been launched to 170,000 agents across the world. So, and we've input, I don't even know how many million of contacts by this time. So just bear with it a little bit. They are ironing out some kinks. Continue to utilize it and familiarize yourself.
Some features disappear for like an hour or two.
Yeah, it happens. Growing pains. These are good problems to have. All right, scripts. Back to that. So as you all know, when do we do scripts in the PC room?
Tuesdays and Thursdays.
At what time?
8:30.
8:30 every day, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Is that the only time for you to practice your scripts?
No.
Who has a scripts partner? Or who does not have a scripts partner? Let's get you a scripts partner. Boom, boom, boom. This is a great place to find a scripts partner. So if you don't have a scripts partner, before noon today, get yourself a scripts partner. And what does that relationship look like? What does that partnership look like?
All up at night, start talking their scripts, they should catch on.
Yeah, figure out a time. Hey, Matt, let's do scripts since we do Tuesdays and Thursdays and we're committed to going there, how about every Monday and Wednesday morning? I'll call you at 7:45 because we're both up and on our drive into work because we get started right at 8 o'clock or 8:30, right? I know everybody here does. Perfect. Some of us more willing than others. So hey, quick phone call. I call Matt, 7:45. Hey, good morning, is this Matt? Yes, it is. Good morning, this is Joe over at Keller Williams Realty. So on and so forth, right into your script. It doesn't have to be a long conversation. I go, you go, I go, you go. Hang up the phone. Find yourself a scripts partner and practice. Scripts are how we communicate effectively with our clients. Moving right along. Bring a laptop, okay. Mega Camp, okay. Complete activities from action preview. Okay, so we're all set on this. I think that was just about it. Okay, without further ado, my part is done. I'm going to hand over the floor to Angela. Have a great day. We'll see you back over in the office at noon.
Hey Joe, is there a photocopier in there? Is that room accessible?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a photocopier.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
That's fine. I just brought this. I didn't know how many people I know.
Oh, okay.
I was gonna pass on it. So I just have one.
copy. I can just pass it down though. I'll deal with that. All right, thanks, Jody. Good morning, everyone. How's everybody doing today?
Great.
Good, good. My name is Angela Lee, and I am with the Manchester team here at Keller Williams Realty. I've been in real estate for, actually, did Joe get me set up? I've been in real estate since 2004. It is not set up. Well, that's interesting. We'll wing it today. Talking about how to price a property to sell. So let's make this interactive. We can, I can share information on how I price properties, how my listing appointment goes, and we can, you guys can ask questions as we go along. Usually there's a slide. Oh, there we go. Okay, here we go. It looks like it's set up there, but it's not here. I'm technically challenged as far as this goes. So. Nope. Let me see if I can find it. Give me 1 second. Anyway, I think we can. How late are you guys expecting to be here today? 11:30?
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay?
I think I should leave your class a little early.
What's that?
I think I could leave a little early today.
Okay, all right, sure. So are you all new to real estate? Has anyone been in business over a year? No, you're all brand new agents. Perfect. All right. So have any of you gone on any listing appointments yet? You have? Okay. How'd that go?
Pretty good. I was just observing though. It wasn't my listing.
Okay.
I just sat and I watched the DV at my old office work with some of his clients, and we walked through the house and stuff like that.
Okay. All right. So you weren't with Keller Williams before? You were with?
No, I was at the Bean Group.
Oh,
this was
great.
in the fall.
Well, welcome.
Thank
Yes.
you.
All right, so we're all lead generating, trying to set those appointments, right? I mean, Joe talked about that. And once we get the appointment, what I usually do to prepare for an appointment, like Joe talked about, I look at the market, and I work a pretty big area. So I work in the Lewiston, Auburn area, but I also work in Oxford. I go to Farmington, Casco, all that area. So it's a pretty big market to know everything about every single town, because as you guys know, real estate is local, and you definitely want to familiarize yourself with the property, with the market before you go. So you got the listing appointment. What I do is, if it's been in MLS before, then you can look it up. You know about what it is. They might have made changes that you're going to have to kind of go with the flow at that. But then, so I pull all the history, like the past 6 months, what's sold, what's like it. Look at the pendings, because those properties will be your sold comps when it goes to appraisal time. And then the currents, that's your competition, right? So you want to make sure that you're very familiar with the competition. And now I'm going to call over at the front desk and see if we can get the pilot up. Just because I want to make sure I go through everything. Let's see. Let's get started. Call David. Give me 1 second. Hi David, it's Angela Lee. How are you? Good. Hey, I'm over at the Ed Center teaching price to sell, and Joe left and the PowerPoint isn't up. So I didn't know if he could come back and set me up so that I make sure I don't miss anything that I'm supposed to be going over. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Bye. All right. Good. He'll be right over. So what I've done is I've also brought. Do you guys all have a pre-listing packet that you have, or a listing presentation that you go over? Have you gone that far in everything?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they gave us a template online.
Okay. All right. Well, I brought the one that we use, and I can pass it around. But basically, when I start a listing appointment, I go in, I walk around the house, check it out, make notes so that I can do a formal market analysis if I haven't done a market analysis already. And then once I view the house and go over everything, then I go through my listing presentation, and this just has information about how we market homes, about Keller Williams being #1 in the world now as far as agents, number of transactions, and volume. And it's a little, I'll pass it around so everybody can see it, but it's just a little bit about us and how the competition looks. And it also goes over pricing strategies in here, so that, and I leave this with them after I meet with them. It talks about how basically there's 4 things that sell real estate, and it's that simple. It's the location, which that's the oldest cliche in the book, right? Location, location, location. It's about the condition of the home. So sometimes there's opportunities for sellers to increase the value by making repairs to it. And you can advise them on those repairs that you think, over time you'll get the experience and know what will benefit the seller. It's also what the market looks like. We don't control the market, we just interpret it. So whatever the market looks like at the current time, you want to let your clients know. And what I like to do is, when I'm showing them the comps and coming up with the market, walk them through it so that they understand where you're pricing the home. Like, how did you come up with the price that you came up with? It has to make sense for them. They have to buy into it. And that's really important, how well you do that. And then the price. The 4th thing is price. Price cures all. We say it's a beauty contest to the door, and then price. It's all about price. So any property has a selling point. Every property is saleable. It just all depends on price. Then I show them, this is like a risk of overpricing, and this really hits home with a lot of people. In 2 to 3 weeks, the market's going to tell you whether your price is right? I mean, National Association of Realtors says if you have 10 showings and no offers, or if you're on the market for 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, and you don't have any showings, then that's an indication that the market's rejecting your price. So you want them to understand that, like, when they first go on the market, that's when the most amount of eyes is going to be on their property. It's when, everybody's online, everybody has the mobile apps now, so you want to make sure the seller understands that they don't want to miss any opportunities. And buyers are pretty savvy out there. It's a funny kind of market right now. We know we're heading into a shift at some time, we just don't know when that is. David's here to save me. I was gonna wing it, but I'm like 3 hours. And maybe just show me what I did that. I just started going over my listing
Is that
presentation.
Dylan's? Or did I just click it?
That's just the background, I think.
That was right. There we go.
Oh, price to sell right there. I've let go of all my programming days.
We have a new computer coming on this as well, so.
Oh, you do?
Sorry, guys.
But it's not just me.
Talk amongst yourselves.
All right, so I'll continue on this. So this is literally this is a 3-month window showing them that when they first go on the market, they're going to get more views, and it declines drastically. This little bump in the activity might have been a price change, a price improvement, but then it drops right off again. So by letting the sellers know, like, you want to price it right. A lot of sellers want to test the market. Like, yes, I know you recommended 200,000. I'd like to start at 250, 225. That's okay, unless, you know, if it's way above, I discourage that, because the longer you're on the market, buyers start to wonder if, did you have a question?
When you're done.
Okay, yeah. The longer it's on the market, buyers start to wonder what's wrong with it, right? They have their mobile apps, they're looking at properties daily, they wanna buy a home, they're seeing what the market is every day. And I've had so many agents or buyers ask me, what's wrong with it? Why is it still on the market, like in the past? So the goal is to get really good at price, and then your days on market will be lower as well, so.
What is that, with that price improvement, and you say, when you do that, you have that little time frame.
Mhm.
How long do you think you call that being?
Before you do a price change?
No, during that price range where you get some activity,
Oh.
it drops off again.
Yeah, I'll pass this around, but it's like a month and it just drops down to nothing.
Okay,
So-
so you do have a month with that small price improvement? Or some activity?
More like probably a week or two, and then it starts to drop down. I tell my sellers, you know, like we don't control the market, we just interpret it. So if we put it out there, and sometimes you have a unique home, so you're kind of doing the best you can to come up with a value. But if you don't get any activity within a couple of weeks, that's an indication the market's rejecting the price. So, very important to hit that home. And then I go over the marketing plan and just answer any questions. Now, this is very important too, where buyers come from. This is, you know, 51% of people find their home on the internet. So you definitely want to make sure your exposure's
You're
online.
good with the arrows now.
Okay, so I just hit awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a great class, everyone.
Awesome. All right, I think Joe went through all of this. Okay, so I'm gonna pass this around. You guys can take a look at it throughout the class. Now, here we're talking about the comparable market analysis, and what I can do, if you guys do, if someone could start a sign-in sheet, if you give me your email address, what I'll do is I'll email this packet to everyone after the class, so that you all have what I'm talking about. This is one that I actually just sold. It's a listing in Auburn. So it was on the market, it had sold like a year and a half before the seller called me to list the property. So I had a pretty good idea of what it was. In this case, it was, the city of Auburn had rehabbed it. Everything looked great. The seller hadn't done, you know, during the appointment setting time, I had pre-called them and asked if they had made any major improvements to the home. And they hadn't, so I knew going in that it was pretty much the same house. Like the market, you know, was maybe a little better when they bought it, but other than that, it was pretty much the same. So I went in with my market analysis, I had everything done. This is just an example of how I do it. It's a spreadsheet, it's just a Google spreadsheet. Your property address is up here, and the other comps that you use are here. Subject property. You can use whatever you're comfortable with. There's lots of market analysis. There's one through main listings that you can use. It's just that over time we've developed this as a team, and I'm happy to share it with you. You just make adjustments much like the appraiser does on the appraisal report, and over time you just know how the adjustments. What I would do if I were you, whenever you work with a buyer, ask them if you can have a copy of their appraisal. And then you get an idea of what the appraiser is adjusting. Right? You know what they're adjusting for a bedroom, the square footage, lot size, just different things. Just get as much information as you can. And when I started out, I had a list going because I didn't remember, you know, how much did they adjust for a bathroom, a half bath, whatever. So just get as much information from those appraisal reports, because that's, you know, once the property goes under contract, you know, we use the same data, so you can get really good at pricing that way. So I made all the adjustments, and I recommended, like you can see the different properties, the way it compared to this one, 117.9, 122.9, and 117.6. Now I listed this last winter, like December-ish, I think. Actually, I listed it 2-1. So at the beginning of February, it was kind of like, what's the market gonna do this spring? Because it definitely slowed down this fall. Everybody's talking about a shift. We just don't know when it's gonna actually hit. So I was starting to think if, it started feeling a little more, of a slowdown than seasonality. So what I started doing was putting in a 5% market adjustment, just to prepare the seller that, listen, we know a shift is coming, all the experts are saying it, I don't know when it's gonna hit, but I wanna make sure that you don't get caught up in it. Because we don't want to set the price, have the market be going down, declining, and then chase the market down. That's always bad, like you wanna get ahead of the market. So what I did in this case was I recommended a price between 115 and 120, even though my prices came out between 117 and 122. And this property ended up selling for 122, and they gave $6,000 back in seller paid closing costs. But the seller was very happy because I was right in there. They knew what to expect. We marketed it, and we found a buyer and had a lot of activity too. So I'll pass this around to you until that.
I have a question.
Yes,
So
sure.
when you're talking about the appraisal and
Yeah.
you writing down what they have changed for,
Yeah,
are you
just
talking-
jotting notes.
Are you talking about from the home previously sold, or just what was already under contract and the bank has already paid for an appraisal?
Like if you're working with a buyer, so,
Okay.
and the lender does an appraisal, a lot of times we don't get copies unless we ask for that.
Oh, okay.
It's the buyer's report, they paid for it, so they can share it with you if they want. So
Okay.
I just used to ask buyers all the time.
If they want, right? If
What's
they,
that?
They can say no.
They can, yeah. And if they ask why you want a copy of it, just let them know that you wanna take a look at how the appraiser adjusted it. There's really just one page that really matters, and it's the adjustment page. It looks much like this. Like the rest of the 60-page report they do, I don't typically look at. It's just, where did they find the properties? Like, sometimes you have to go outside of the town to find a good comp. Appraisers will, like for me, I live in Turner. Turner, Green, and Leeds is the same school district, plus Minot and Poland are very similar markets to Turner. So sometimes, like on appraisals, I've seen Minot, I've seen Poland. So you wanna know, like, what towns are the appraisers comparing different areas to? So it's just a learning thing.
If the appraisal comes in higher than the contract price, would you try to change that or something at all?
No, that's a bonus for your buyer, right?
Okay.
Yeah. If,
Oh, okay, I was thinking you were on the listing side, I'm sorry.
yeah, if you're on the listing side, typically we don't get copies of the appraisal because the buyers pay for it.
Okay.
So it'd be a little awkward asking for that, I think, but, plus you don't want the seller to know if it came in over. You don't want them to think that they left money, on the table. And appraisals are just like, you could have, 5 agents do a market analysis and come up with a different price, right? Depending on how they adjust it and what they're doing to look for properties. It's the same thing with appraisals. Different appraisers come up with different prices, so, usually on the seller side, I stay away from that.
So the bank doesn't pay for the appraisal?
No, the buyer pays for the appraisal.
Okay.
Yeah.
For some reason I thought the bank did and the buyer paid for the inspections.
No, it's part of their closing costs, so if seller paid concessions
Okay.
are negotiated, then it might come out of that, but it's definitely a line item on the, closing disclosure.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah, so, got that. The other thing that I do is, obviously you pick 3 properties when you do a market analysis to show them, that's what we do anyway, you can pick more, sometimes appraisers use 5 or 6. I print the full MLS sheet to show them what the property looks like, what it sold for, how many days on the market. They have all the information, so they can't say, well, that property doesn't compare to mine. You've got the same square footage, you've got, the same number of bedrooms, same baths. So I show them that, but I also show them what I had to choose from. So in MLS, when you're don't tell me the battery died now. Come on. Power's on. Yeah. Awesome. What is going on? Alright, well, hopefully that wakes up in a minute. The power is on. I don't know why it's not. I guess I gotta hit it every so often once it comes back, right? So it doesn't do this again. Alright. Okay. So the search, so I keep it pretty simple in MLS. Look for sold for the past 6 months. The same town, I try to stay within the same town. And even within the same town, depending on how big it is, if it's Portland, you wanna look at the neighborhoods as well. In my area, usually town is pretty, you know, it's pretty good to stay within the town. You want about the same square footage. Like I've noted over time that an appraiser will pick properties that are either, you know, within 200 square feet of the subject property. So I try to stay within that. I don't limit it to number of bedrooms because I want to see as much data at first as I can. I mean, if you set up your search, you can always add things to criteria to narrow it down. But like sometimes when you put in, you know, the 200 above and below the square footage, the age of the home is another important feature. And the town, sometimes you only get a few properties. So you want to look at everything because you want to interpret the market the best you can. Other times you have to, you know, if you pull up 50 sold comps that come up with just that minimal criteria, then you want to narrow that down. So then I start narrowing it down by different things depending on what I'm looking at. But you can see in this case, for this property, I had 37 properties to choose from as far as the square footage and the age and all of that. So then from those, I picked the 3 that I came up with. And sometimes I do more than 3 as far as making the adjustments. I usually print these out. This is just the way I do it. You can do it however you want, obviously. But I make the adjustments right on this sheet and I write the value. So I might have 6 or 7 and then like I just analyze them. Why are they different? Which one? Take out the high, take out the low, average them out. What's the average of all 7? What's the average of, you know, the highest 3 or the lowest 3 or the mid 3? And just try to determine where that property should be priced. Does that make sense?
I have a question about
Yep.
like, so when you're comparing like, let's just say 3 homes together, I just remember when taking the classes recently,
Yep.
with Trellis, there was something like where you, if like there's 2 bedrooms as compared to 3, then you subtract or whatever, how much, but
Yeah.
like, where do you get those numbers from? I know you can,
From the appraisals.
so you have to just learn what appraisals are.
Yeah,
are
or
like
ask
for
another
homes.
agent.
There's no like guide.
If you go in the drive, they have an average adjustment for that.
Okay.
So you can pump that on.
Oh, the drive that they give you when you sign up for Keller Williams?
Yeah.
Has he
yeah.
updated that? Cause that's from 2009, right?
I don't know.
Oh, is it?
we have a new beginners resource thing. That's
Sure.
I don't think I'm on the right. Oh, I'm not.
Charlotte will hook you on that.
Okay, Charlotte.
Thank you for saying that because I've been with Keller Williams, you know, since 2012 and they didn't have that back then.
Really?
So
That's from
2012, 2009, okay. Alright, so they're
Joe said he was
probably
working on updating it, cause I was like, yo, this is from 2009.
It's a starting point.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Sorry.
But you can also, I mean, that's the great thing about Keller Williams too. Grab an experienced agent and just ask them, hey, what would you comp for an in-ground pool? What would you comp for
Right.
a bedroom? Until you get, so it's
So
natural.
now, yeah.
Yeah.
What it is.
Cause Yeah. it also
varies by town. True.
Right, areas, yeah. I wouldn't say, like if you're, and I think it price range too.
Yeah.
Like if you're talking under 200, the price adjustments are different than
Yeah.
if you're above.
And
so.
that, they have 2 columns on that sheet, in the
Mhm.
drive, one for over 300 and one for under 300.
Okay, and it definitely, that's why it's important to really compare similar properties,
Mhm.
because that's how you're gonna really determine the value.
So can it get kinda tricky for you when you're outside of Auburn or Turner or Poland?
Oh, yeah.
Your area,
You look at more,
Yeah.
right? So I look at as many, if I go to a town, like I just listed one in West Gardner. It's the first property in 15 years that I've listed in West Gardner. So I really had no idea what the market was. It was an expired listing, so I had an idea, you know, they were on the market, they got a little bit of activity, but no offers. So I knew they were outside of the price that they needed to be, but that it probably wasn't that much. So when I looked at the data, I think we went out at 15,000 less than what they were previously. You know, we'll see what happens with that. But definitely you wanna try to get the closest you can to that subject property.
do you run into situations where somebody doesn't take your advice and they wanna list for 10 or 15 grand higher, and then don't sell the property and then blame you and go off to another real estate company and finally wise up and lower their price to what it should have
So
been.
that used to happen, right? So now I'm getting very good at, because the more experience you get, the more you can interpret the market. So I'm very good if a seller, I let them know, my range is like on that case, 115 to 120. If you go above that, I'm gonna call you once every week, every 2 weeks, and I'm gonna let you know what kind of activity we're getting. Don't shoot the messenger, cause
Yeah.
you know, if you choose to go above this, we're probably gonna be talking about a price change. You know, it's okay to test the market, but don't test it for more than 2 to 3 weeks. It's enough. And I have definitely talked sellers out of selling that are unrealistic about the price. Like I had one that they thought their home was worth $200,000. Last summer, I went on this listing appointment. They thought their home was $200,000. It's commercial. It's different than the comps you're showing me. My market analysis said 115. So that's it's tough to communicate that.
Yeah.
You know, like it's really tough to communicate that. However, it's not you, it's the market. You have to really stress that with the seller, that you're interpreting the market. You can't change the market.
Right.
I'd love to get you $500,000 for your property, but the market's just not gonna support it. Not now anyway. If you wait, you know, over time, values go up. Historically, I mean, we see the roller coaster and we're probably heading into a shift now. However, over time, you're gonna see that increase, so might not be the right time for them to sell, right? And it doesn't do me any good to list a property and have it sit in MLS, or have the stress of having to follow up with that seller and tell them I've got nothing. You know what I mean? So I let people know, even if I have a unique property that it's hard to find comps, you know, I let them know this is my best estimate right now, interpreting the data, and I show them everything. So they know, like you educate them on what you're looking at and how you came up with the price, and that, listen, we're a team, we might have to adjust this price. So if you let people know that ahead of time, then they can't really blame you. You know, it's everything that you set the expectations up front. And if they choose to overprice the property, especially if you recommended a different price, they won't blame you, they'll know. I've had sellers actually call me and say, yeah, you know, it's been, you know, a couple of weeks, we're not getting activity, what do you think about a price change? Yes. So you always say yes to that, because if you haven't had offers, you know, the market, I think 2019 is going to be flat, like a lot like 2018, just from what the experts are saying and everything. However, no one has a crystal ball. If you miss the mark, you're going to know it right away. We're still seeing multiple offer situations if places are priced, and that's the benefit of pricing it where it needs to be versus over. A lot of sellers say, let them just make me an offer, you know, like, but you don't need to leave that road, because if you price it right, there's buyers sitting out there looking on their mobile apps, waiting for the property that they want to purchase, and there's a pool of buyers out there waiting. Once that hits MLS, they're going to look at it, and if it's overpriced, they know it, you know, because they're looking at things every day. So, does that make sense? Okay.
You can see too, just the properties that come up and they're like newly listed pending,
Yep.
those are the ones that are priced right. 'Cause
Exactly.
there's always buyers
Yeah.
out there, you just gotta make sure that you have like the same 5 people
Yep.
that have made offers on the last 5 properties that were almost clones. They're still out there, 4 of them are still out there for the next one.
Right, and that's why the chart that is in our listing presentation shows when you're first on the market, that's when the most amount of eyes are looking. So, yeah, because it's like fresh meat, right?
Why
Yes.
are you saying that we're in a shift right now?
I'm not saying we're in a shift, but everyone is predicting that, you know, the real estate market is cyclical.
Yep.
So it goes up and comes down. We've been in a good market for a few years.
Long time,
Yeah. So, and like this December, January, it felt like we were shifting a little bit. Things were slowing down. We started to see more price decreases. We started to see average days on market start to go up a little bit. So those are all indications. Now that, you know, spring is here, you know, I'm thinking, you know, we probably will be pretty flat. However, you know, it's probably not a good time to test the market right now as far as having your seller
Oh, yeah.
go over. If you're talking 10 or 15,000, then that's something you can work with and save it after 2 to 3 weeks by reducing to get it where it really needs to be. But if they're talking like they wanna test it by 50,000, you might wanna think about that. Cause you know, you want properties to sell, you don't wanna just list them.
I listened to Leanne's class yesterday
Yep.
on the, whatever,
Mhm.
the economic outlook.
Yep.
And the latest forecast had said that the interest rates are gonna, they're gonna stay under 5. That's
Yep.
what they're looking at.
Sure.
So, we're looking, like you were saying, pretty much flat as last year, which last year was good.
It was a
That's
good year,
That was
yeah.
the indication, that's the indication so far, right now, for
Yep.
this year, so. I
Perfect.
was like,
Good, they concur.
yeah, and I'm like, don't say the shift, don't say the shift.
Well,
I don't want-
and it's funny, don't be scared of a shift, like, you'll learn
Right.
that. Bold is coming, has everyone heard of Bold?
Yep.
Has Joe talked to everyone about Bold? I've taken Bold 10 times. I will take it again. It's, something, it's just, every time you take it, you can take it multiple times and get something different out of it, cause you're at a different point in your business. I'd encourage everybody to at least sign up for the first step. The first step is free, it's a 1-day thing, and, you know, they'll talk about shifts. Yes, they're gonna happen. I started in 2004
Mhm.
in my real estate business. I was part-time. I worked part-time at Liberty Mutual, and in 2006, when the market started to go down, I decided that I was gonna give up my job, my security. My business was, you know, active enough that I felt comfortable doing that, and everybody thought I was crazy, cause we're going into shift, right? Things are coming down, the market's gonna slow down, and my thought was that if I can survive during a shift, I can survive anytime, right?
Mhm.
So, it's only gonna get better from there. Little did I know the shift was gonna last like 5 years. I expected it to be a year or two, but, you know, like, you survive the shift, and actually that's when you gain market share. Like, now I know, like, the shift doesn't scare me anymore, because as we shift, as the market declines, agents are gonna get out of the business. It's gonna allow you to gain more market share, and once you gain that market share, you don't lose it. So,
Plus you might get a heck of a deal on a house.
exactly,
You're shopping yourself.
exactly.
You know,
And
it's good and bad and everything.
exactly, and houses sell all the time, thankfully, right? I mean, it's just that you've gotta capture them. You might have to double the activities you're doing to get the same amount of sales as you do in a good market. But the sales are there, it's just how you look at it, so don't be afraid of a shift.
Okay.
Alright, so getting back to this, so I show them all of the closed transactions that I had to choose from, and I let them know the reasons why I didn't pick these, and that these were the most similar and the best once I did the adjustments. This is where I really thought the market had to be. The other thing that's on this, does everyone know how to print the list sheet in MLS? Like, in it, you can print, actually I should back up, does everyone know how to print a page like this, the detail page? Okay, that's the one that comes up, it's the automatic one, the default, I guess. But you can also print, if you select all the properties, there's a little checkbox at the top, you can select them all and then print it, take it off detail and select list, and it gives you this list. On this list, it shows where the properties are, the price they sold for, the number of rooms, bedrooms, baths, the year it was built, and also the tax amount. So assessed value has nothing to do with market values, right? But what it does do is that the town has appraised those properties all at the same point in time. Unless you're talking new construction, and then all that goes out the window. But if you have a home that's over, 10 or 20 years old, the town probably went through and said, this house is worth more than this one because of this, and this is the assessed value, so you get the varying taxes. If you have a property that you're selling, you can look at the tax value, and sometimes that indicates sales price too. It doesn't always, like sometimes it's out of the water, but in this case it really did. The taxes were, let's see, they were, goodness, where is the tax? 2,800. So when you look at the ones that I picked, they were very close to the same tax bracket. So that told me right there, okay, this is where the market is for that house. So it made it a little easier. So show them the clothes, show them everything that you're looking at, because then they don't wonder if you just picked the comps to get the price where you wanted it, right? You priced my house too low. No, I didn't, because we went through all the comps. You know, in a rising market, you can test the market a little more, but I wouldn't test the market more than 10,000 right now, just because of that.
Would you consider Portland abnormal though compared to the rest of the state? Like, you would try a price?
Well, if you look at the inventory and the sold and like the absorption rates, it definitely looks like a seller's market, right? But if you, I've seen expired listings in Portland still. You know, those are people that are testing the market that, you know, if you have a home in Portland right now that expired, you're overpriced, right? Like, sometimes you can get away with, yeah, it's the way they marketed, the pictures were awful, you know, they were dark, they didn't show the whole rooms, but most of the time, you know, if it's in a hot area like Portland, if it's expired, it's probably an indication it's overpriced. So, the other sheet that I list is the same square footage, age, everything, the actives and the pendings. Because the pendings are the ones that the buyers are buying right now, not 6 months ago, like up to 6 months ago. And the actives are what you're competing with. So you always want to price the property so that that your house gets sold from the active listings, right? You want to know that if a buyer is looking at these 3 actives, that you're outpricing them. So that's the fastest way to get a sale too. So I show them all their competition, and you know, they might say, well, my house is better because of this. I want to price it higher than that one. Well, what if we price it the same way? At the same exact price, but yours is better. Which one do you think the buyer's gonna buy? They're gonna buy the better one, right? So, so let them know what the competition is. And I usually update people, you know, if it's been a month, I'll let them know it's sold. You know, if they haven't sold within a month, I'll pull up the solds in the last month in that town and say, you know, this is what your competition is doing. So, and I've not done this again. Anybody have any questions on that, on how you pick the properties? I'll pass this around now, and then anything else on that you're curious about or I didn't cover? One second while the computer boots up. Let's see what that. So I asked earlier, like, anybody been on any listing appointments? Has anyone listed a property yet? You have? Awesome. Yeah. One or more?
Just one.
Yeah.
Just one.
Okay.
Rick Dow's doing most of it. I'm just kind of
Nice.
We're
Rick Dow's
sharing
awesome.
the commission, and he's
Yeah. So you co-listed it
Yeah.
with him.
Yeah.
It's a great idea. Goodness. Come on now. So objections, one of the things while I'm waiting for this to come up, how you can get better and better is when you go on a listing appointment and they don't list where you recommend, the seller's outscripted you, right? They've convinced you that their house is worth more than it actually is. Like, you've done your homework, you've done the market analysis.
But in the end, you have to list the price they want.
You do, yeah, but you don't have to take the listing, right?
Uh,
You can, you can say, I've walked away from listings before. That's fine, maybe I'm not the agent for you. If you close that binder while you're meeting with them, that's a huge, eye opener for them. That I know if you know a property is not gonna sell for the price that you listed at, you're not doing the seller any favors. Cause they've got their expectations up way higher than they should be, and you're just setting them up for disappointment. So, like I said, if it's 10,000, I might be okay with that as long as, you take a price change at the time of the listing, and part of my listing packet that I take along with all the other documents is a price change. If they wanna go above what I'm recommending, or even if they list where I'm recommending, you can still do a price change right at the table. Just date it, a couple weeks out or 3 weeks out, and that's a way So,
Well-
that you know that they're, you know, they truly do wanna just test the market, but they're gonna be motivated enough. You wanna go back to their motivation.
So do you
Why do they want
just
to?
sort of say, like, if there hasn't been a certain amount of activity in, say, 15 days, we're gonna drop it to X
Yeah.
value?
You can do it one of two different ways. I've done it both ways. Now I actually carry a price change form, and if they want to do it at that time, at the time of listing, I just let them know it's easier now, because we know if we don't have any offers and we don't get the right amount of activity, that we're gonna be reducing the price. So just sign it, and instead of dating, you might date it, you know, May 1st, when you're in April. And, you know, then you've got it, and you've got them committed. I always let them know I'm gonna check in with you before I don't just automatically drop
Yeah.
the price. I want them to know. Stay in communication with them, right? That's the number one reason that people are unhappy with their agents, is that they don't hear from them. So if you're constantly communicating with that seller and letting them know, this is what's happening, this is what I've done for you, because if you don't let them know what you're doing, they're creating their own story, right?
Yeah.
So they're not gonna, you know, they're not gonna know that you've sent an email to all the local agents and let them know. They're not gonna know you put it on Facebook as, you know, a new listing and trying to get exposure for it. You have to tell them. Don't just assume that they know what you're doing, so. And that's a tough part too. Especially if you haven't had any showings, to call a seller, that causes, at least for me, that causes a lot of stress, right? I've gotta call this seller and follow up. Those are the calls that you put to the end of the day, because, you know, you've gotta have a tough conversation with them. But, you feel so much better after you do. And a lot of times, if they know what they're doing, like, they're coming up with their own, conclusion that they need to reduce the price. This is just not working. Come on. I think we definitely need a new computer.
And the TV turned on.
Change
We're gonna
it to
problem every day,
Steam
yeah.
itself.
How do you mean the computer
TV
itself?
turned off.
Yeah.
What's that?
And the TV turned off. You turn the TV back on with the remote.
With the
Yeah, I have a
remote.
remote
You
over
have
there,
to
so
hit the
it's-
power button.
It's not even coming up here though. Like, I'm not even seeing my screen here. Maybe you have to do one and then the other. Let's see. Alright. So how are you guys lead generating? Where are you finding your contacts? Like, what are some of the people that you're calling?
Friends and family.
Mm-hmm. It's the number one way to do it. Yep.
For sale by owners.
Okay. How's that
Those
going?
are- I had one person who like flat out told me they would not work with agents, and I said, you won't work with buyer's agents?
Uh-huh.
She said, well, if you bring me a buyer, I'll work with you, which I interpreted as, I'm not gonna pay you,
Uh-huh.
right?
Right.
But no, I haven't got a listing from that yet, but a lot of people do.
A lot of people do. They've got their hand up, they wanna sell.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's the commission. So what I try to do is I try to get in front of them, like set that appointment. So, you know, if you have a buyer, you know, I'll work with you. A lot of them will say, I'll pay you a 2% commission, 3% commission. They'll throw a number out there, and you say, well, it's a lot easier for me to sell your home if I've seen it, and then I can talk about it. When's a good time for me to stop by? And
And do you bring a CMA right with you and just?
I don't bring a CMA.
No?
No, but cause a lot of times they won't list with you at that first meeting, right? You're building rapport. If they do, great.
Okay.
But I do bring my marketing book, but I let them know, listen, while I'm there checking out your house, I'd love to share how my team gets houses sold. Just in case you ever do decide to list with a realtor, you have my information, and you'll be able to make a good decision based on that. And most of the time they say, yeah, that's fine, because they know, like I let them know up front, I'm not gonna pressure you, and that's not what this appointment is about. It's about me checking out your home, matching it up with buyers, because it's part of the inventory, even though it's not on MLS. And it's, you know, and by the way, while I'm there, it'll take 10 to 15 minutes for me to go through my marketing plan with you. Is that okay? And they always say yes. So, and I've gotten listing appointments, got callbacks before from that, so. But it's all about the follow-up. I don't know what's up.
Do you bring up statistics with them, like how much your list to sale price is versus the average FICO and?
In that, marketing book, it, I don't know if we left it in there this year, but yeah, I let them know, my average days on market is, 31 days right now, my average list to sales price is over 99%, and that's the solds, so, that's with, if something price changed, you can, if you reduced it to 100 and it sold for 100, that's 100%, right? It was 100% listed for what it sold for.
Are for sale by owners typically well overpriced? Do they, if they're gonna err on one side, aren't they going to?
Sometimes they're underpriced. So I just had one, I went on the listing appointment, it was a Sphere referral. They were selling the house. They let me know when I went that they had a potential buyer and that they just wanted to know what I thought the house was worth. So I went knowing that and armed with, I did a market analysis for them. My market analysis, and this doesn't happen very often, but when it does, I love it. They thought it was worth less than what I said it was. And I brought the data, so they were gonna leave money on the table. In fact, they did, because they had already negotiated a price with the buyer. However, that was I think they increased it a little bit based on what I said. But when I went, I said, listen, have you ever sold a house before? Do you know all the paperwork that has to go into it? Do you have your seller's property disclosure? Do you have the lead paint form? Do you have this? And they don't, and they don't know how to do it. So, hey, listen, for a reduced fee, I can help you with that buyer. And by the way, let's just list it, and then if this buyer doesn't work out, because I've seen that happen so many times, you have a buyer, but when it comes right down to it, they don't get pre-approved, or they change their mind, or they don't want to put it in writing. Let's just list the property, and if that buyer ends up buying it, we'll just write it in other conditions that, it'll be a flat fee, $5,000 or whatever it is, if this name buys it. And then you've got the listing still, you can count it towards your statistical numbers, and everybody's happy. So, and they were amazed at how much paperwork actually went into it.
I still am.
I have a question about that.
I'm still trying to get this.
Do you ever, with those properties specifically where they don't wanna pay a listing agent, they really wanna save the money, do you ever negotiate as a transaction broker and say, listen, I'll file the paperwork for you for 1% and just put it on MLS and do that?
Usually it's a flat fee.
To me, it feels like I'm selling myself short.
Right. I don't do that unless they have a buyer. If they have a buyer, then I'll do it for, like that one I was talking about, I actually did it for 4%. And I thought that was a win-win, because I'm gonna have a little more work, right? Because their buyer is working, with me, really. So I'm getting that buyer closing as well. But never 1% or less than that. The one thing, our, deductible is $2,500. You wanna make sure you make at least that. So, you can do whatever you want. You set the commission, but you earn it. Everybody thinks real estate is easy and it's, we make all this money. It's not, it's tough.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of business expenses that go into it. So, does that make sense?
It does. Well, it's just one of those things where I love, like this lady that I was talking to is a $500,000 for sale by owner.
Yep.
She doesn't wanna work with a broker.
Okay.
Yeah,
see, my average sales price is like $180, so.
Yeah,
I'm
see,
in a
I
different
look
market.
at that and I'm like, I could just process the paperwork for you for $5,000.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it, just.
Does she have a buyer?
Put the listing, she doesn't yet, I don't think, but just put the listing and just do the state mandated forms and pretty much that's it, right? $5,000 easy.
So,
but at the same time,
Yeah.
I don't, I can provide really good service to someone for the full commission,
Right.
So I really wanna kinda go back and circle around and attack that for sale by owner listing.
Right. Don't
But it's
don't
really
sell
hard
yourself
to get
short
your
though.
Yeah, that's what I don't wanna do, I don't wanna do that.
If you agree to that and you put it out, so okay, when we list a property, we share our commission on the listing side, right, with the buyer agent or the transaction broker.
Right.
So that 1% becomes a 0.5% if you're sharing that, depending on, if you do a 50-50 split. So, because the chances of you finding the buyer, we love it when that happens, we get both sides of the deal, but it doesn't happen very often. So you're probably gonna be sharing that if you put it in MLS and another agent brings a buyer.
Well, the reason I ask is most of the transaction brokers I see, because
Yep.
they're usually working as true transaction brokers for people who have a pool of property. It's
Mhm.
1% for the transaction broker who just does the paperwork, and then 2.5 for
Right.
the buyer.
Right,
Is it possible to go in there and negotiate that? I mean, I don't want to. I want to list it for 2.5% because it's a large listing.
well, our office policy, like, we have to share for, I think, buyer brokers, whatever we write it at. So if we write a property at 5%, we're, by our policy, Keller Williams Portland policy, we're obligated to share 2 to 4% of whatever we list it at,
Right.
per our policy.
So don't try to work as a transaction broker.
No, not on the
Okay.
listing side. Yeah, no, I think
That's
that.
my inclination. I just wanted to check.
Yeah, and usually, like, you have to prove your value to them, right? This is why you wanna list it with me. Like, my average list price is 99%. So it's okay if you can't go below this amount. Like, if you list it for 500,000 and you don't wanna go below that, that's okay, because historically, if the property's worth 500 and you price it well, you should get a good list to sales price. So they don't have to come down. They don't sell their property until they sign a contract, so, but things change, you know, sellers that say they won't take anything less than X number of dollars, as time goes on, that changes. And also, if you ask questions about their motivation and really dig into, why is it important for you to sell? Where are you going? What does that mean for you? Do you have to sell? Do you not have to sell? I mean, you do get buyers out there that say, I'm not selling for anything less than this. And then if they're way out of whack, the one I went on last summer, I just listed it for, 118,000. So I walked away from it back then because I'm like, I can't help you at 200,000. It just, I know it's not going to sell. Yes, it has a commercial possibility, but it's not worth $80,000. So gave them time. They actually listed with another agent, and it expired, and they called me, and I listed it. So, and
Did
we're
they list
getting
it for the 200,000 with the other agent?
they like 190, 95 or something. Yeah. So,
A business owner's savvy, like,
yeah.
if they know that they're pricing in a business, they're not gonna look at it. We looked at a house in Westbrook.
Yeah.
A bunch of us went for open houses, or, showings, actually, I scheduled showings, and
Mhm.
it had a daycare in it,
Mhm.
which, yes, could provide a lot of value.
Right.
And I think they were asking $389.
Yep.
And it was a really nice house, and the daycare was really nicely done as well. But I think they were pricing it in. I think probably, $339 would have been reasonable. The only people who are gonna pay $389 are someone who wants to open a daycare in their house.
And it was all, below grade, so it's in the basement,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Well, and the other thing with that, if you've got the comps to prove the property isn't worth that, you have to sell it, when you market a property, you sell it to the buyer agents, right? To
Yeah.
get them to show it, you sell it to the buyers, and you also, once it's under contract, you have to sell it to the appraiser. So that happened to me a couple of times last year where, the market was really hot, there was no inventory. I recommended, in one case, say 225 was like the max that I thought this property would sell for. They wanted to go at 250, and I'm like, you know what, it's spring, it's a hot market, okay, we'll test the market at 250, but you'll have to come down if it doesn't sell. Well, we got multiple offers. They ended up getting full price. They got 3 offers. 2 of them were down where I said the property was worth, like the 225, 230 range. The third one was 250. So I let them know, this is your lucky day. Because we have multiple offers, this buyer is willing to pay your price, but the market's talking to you here. The market is telling you that your property is worth 225 because we've got these other 2 buyers that know they're in a multiple offer situation and aren't willing to pay more than 225. So we went with the 250 appraisal. Well, inspections happened, so they got hit on a water system. It was a private water. They had radon and uranium, and so they got hit with that. That's okay because they got their 250, they're happy. Well, then appraisal happens. Appraisal came in appraiser called me, I can't get it to 250. I'm like, kinda not surprised, you know, I didn't say that, but, you know, I'm like, I know, it's tough. He came in at 237.5. So to sell the property, at that time we had negotiated some seller paid concessions, so we split those in half and split the difference. And the seller sold because that's the market talking to you. If you don't work with this buyer, you're gonna go back on the market and the next offer could be lower. We might not get multiple offers.
So you split between 237 and the 250?
We had $5,000, at 250 we had $5,000 in seller paid concessions, so we dropped it down to 2,500.
Oh, I see.
And the seller took the 237.5. So the seller lost, you know, a considerable amount there. But at the beginning I had set their expectation, you know, that the property's only worth 225. So in the end they still got more than I thought they would, just because of what happened, so you never know. In your Ignite book, is there a section for the price to sell? Just, I thought maybe since I can't get this working that we can, if somebody can shout out what the next thing is, I can talk more about it. How does that sound? Maybe not. Here we go. There we go. Why is it beeping at me now? Is it just catching up now because I've hit enter so many times?
This might be kind of a silly question that I should probably already know the answer to, but if you are working as a buyer agent for somebody and you're putting in offers and you're kind of going back with an offer situation, it's okay for me to ask the listing agent if there are already other offers on the table, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. In fact, you could ask the listing agent anything.
Yeah.
It's whether they respond or not. Like, I get questions all the time, like, how low will the seller go?
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, because, and it's just.
I'm not gonna tell them,
Right.
even though I know, but, you know.
It's just I'm in a weird situation right now because I got told that I was dealing with a really motivated seller, and she doesn't seem that motivated. It came back a little different than what I would consider motivated, so.
Right. Well, everybody has their own perception of what that means, right?
Right.
So they could be really motivated, they wanna sell, but maybe they can't come down. Like, sometimes that happens too, you go on listing appointments, not so much now, but like in 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
I was going on listing appointments and they paid $200,000 and their property's worth $150.
Yeah.
They owe
That's
more than what
awful.
they can sell it for.
Well, and
So maybe that's the case, maybe she is motivated, but.
in this situation, I think the seller, and this is all just, I'm assuming if this is all, this could not be true at all, this is just what I'm getting.
Yep.
She seems to be a older lady that lives down in Florida.
Yeah.
And I believe, it seems like the house was inherited or gifted to her.
Okay.
So I'm feeling that there's some sort of like emotional connection to this home.
Absolutely.
So what I told my buyer to do, cause we're going back in with another counteroffer, a nice strong counteroffer. I told my buyer to write her a letter. Cause I'm working with a sweet buyer who just fell in love with this home, wants to take good care of it. I mean, it's already planning where the lavender plants are gonna go on the porch. Like, it's becoming very personal.
Okay.
So I said, write a letter. Write a letter and I'll put it in with the counteroffer.
Right,
Like,
right.
you know?
And I think the letter is great, and I've had
And who knows if it'll do anything.
buyers get properties because of the letters. However, you wanna be careful when you're writing those, because you don't want to put in anything about like kids or family, or you don't wanna violate fair housing.
Oh, no,
So
that's a good point.
Like, the lavender, great.
Yeah,
You know, like you can do all that, and,
Maybe
that
her
she'll
hopes
take
and
good
dreams for
care.
what the property is going to be
Yeah.
to her, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Good call though. but
Why would that
luckily-
violate it?
Because.
Well, because you can't,
Right,
like the seller can't pick because based on
if there are
any of
multiple
the fair
offers,
housing.
I don't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry.
No, that's
If-
fine.
If there are multiple offers on the table and then my buyer wrote, oh my gosh, my kids are gonna love the backyard and,
But
oh,
they
it's
don't want
wonderful.
kids in there or something like that?
No, it's not that, just with the fair housing, they're so strict about it that if the seller goes, you know what, sorry, single person, I want the kids in the backyard.
Cause you're making the decision based on
Based
family.
on that single
Family
woman that
status.
also put the offer in could turn around and say, well, that's not fair, I mean,
Right.
do you see what I'm, is Am I saying that right?
Like when we advertise properties too, you
Yeah.
can't, you have to be very careful, you can't talk about,
Right.
you know, like the race, religion, family, all of that.
Okay.
So, same thing with the letter, when you're submitting that letter,
Yep.
like, I wouldn't, and I've, you know, I've had agents, you know, I wanna, raise my kids here, it's a perfect property, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I tell the seller, here's the letter because I got it, I'm gonna give it to them. However, you can't make your decision based on this. This is nice, but let's set their emotions aside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is their offer, because you don't wanna violate that fair housing.
But once they see the evidence,
No.
you can't pull it, you
Right.
know,
Right,
it's out there.
right, right.
Luckily, my
Exactly,
person's a
but
single
you
person,
do
so
the best.
she doesn't
Yeah,
have
it
to
sounds
worry.
like planting the
She's
lavender
the
on the port,
lavender.
that's
I work-
perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So we'll see, we'll see how
So,
it goes.
yeah, in gatherings, like they can talk about like having gatherings
Oh, I
there
can't
and all
wait
of
to post
that.
my,
Just be careful with it, that's all I'm saying. Like, when I get a letter from a buyer, I cringe because of that, you know, like I'm like, ugh. Like,
Yeah.
you know, my obligation to the seller, I feel like I have to share it, but, alright, this is obviously, does not like me today. So, did anyone find like, the next page, like something, or
It's right
you can just do
here.
it?
Right.
Perfect,
I
okay,
don't know exactly pricing strategies and then.
okay,
what else.
yeah. Might give me something.
Have you ever seen like the real name lines? Like
Yeah.
you make videos of them and send them the link?
I saw
Oh,
some
yeah.
CMA scripts.
So we did one.
Yeah.
And the seller
Knowledge for
found that
achievement, it
online.
might not be,
She wrote us a letter. She's like, I sold the house in you guys get to see
yeah,
it."
so I might just expand.
Guess that works out. We didn't get the letter. We got
My
the-
sister and her husband
There you
sold a
go.
house in Saco, and
That's amazing.
that same thing, they got a letter from a young
Yeah.
family
Yep,
saying, we wanna make this our forever house.
Yeah.
My kids
Yeah.
go to Thornton Academy,
yeah,
you know,
That's scary.
and my sister just fell in love
What
with
if it
the
works
letter.
out? You're
Right.
She was like, oh, I really want this,
Exactly.
you know,
right,
and they did it in 5 minutes.
right. You just hope that it's the highest and best offer.
Yeah.
One of those letters.
Oh, yeah, my sister and brother-in-law, I'm sure it was.
Yeah, so that's good. Alright. Anyone have any questions over anything I've covered or want more information?
So there's an art to this, the
Oh, there is.
market analysis.
Absolutely.
It's certainly not a science.
No, no, and sometimes, like I said, you have a unique property, like, I just listed a property and it's an octagon house. So,
is that in Auburn?
no, it's in West Gardner, actually, it's the West Gardner one that I
Okay.
just listed.
Because there's one in Auburn that is awesome looking.
Where is it in Auburn, cause I'm from.
Is it like a yurt?
No, it's not.
No,
this,
dream houses are usually quite a bit different.
My friend
They're
just built a
amazing.
roundhouse in Saco and couldn't get an appraiser to give her
well, because there's no comps,
Right.
right? It's very tough. So, I've had that happen too, where market analysis, there's just no data for it. So in this case, I had to go by square footage and I let the seller know, I've never sold an octagon house before, so we'll see what happens. But this one is, like, you never know what you're gonna come across in real estate, that's one of the things that I love about it. It's always different. So this one, the seller had a lot of history, they had owned it since 1978.
Cool.
They loved the property, it was built in like 1856. And the construction, is 10-inch boards, like 1 inch thick, and they're stacked on top of each other, like this, and nailed down. And so the whole exterior is 10 inches thick, like it's 10 inches all the way around, so it's really neat. But the room's cut up too, like not everybody's gonna want an octagon house, like the way everything is.
Countertops are off.
How much are they asking?
$290, yeah, it's a really cool house, it has a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
love
history.
octagonal houses.
Yeah,
I was in.
go take a look at it.
I was in Dresden
Yeah.
this weekend. There's a place called Blinn Hill where
Yeah.
I guess there's a weather observatory because when you listen to the scan on the weather radio, they refer to Blinn Hill in Dresden.
Yep,
There was this home, very nice cape with horses and a big corral,
yep,
which would have been easy to appraise except for the fact that they have the most incredible view of Mount Washington and all of them, just a panoramic.
right, so how do you
Unbelievable.
adjust for that?
How do you put a price on that, a value on that view?
Right, right.
I mean, I'd rather live there than on the ocean personally.
Right. And those are the type of properties, if you don't have comps that have the view,
Yeah.
like, and when I first started, you meet appraisers if you go on their appointments with them, which you might wanna do at first, just to, see what they're looking for. But, so I call appraisers and say, hey, listen, I've got this, how do you comp that? So, not the Octagon house, but I did have, a house that was like built in the side of a mountain, so it was kinda unique. I didn't end up listing it because they thought it was worth way more than what I came up with for a price. But like, the bedrooms had no windows because it was in the back of the house, and, it was just this crazy house, and
That was like inside the mountain?
yeah, built right in the mountain, the back side of the house. So the appraiser was like, yeah, that's tough, there's no comps. Even log cabins sometimes, if you're in the right area, there's tough, because the appraiser needs one log cabin that's sold, or log home. And, so if you get up into areas that, they have to prove that they had to go 50 miles to find another comp, because there aren't any. And you get into, you never know, it's kind of a luck of the draw, so we have to convince the appraiser sometimes that it's worth what it is, so.
Are you on the Kathy Manchester team?
I am.
I've showed 2 of your houses in Auburn.
You have?
One in Auburn, one in Lewiston. I
Yep.
fell in love with the one in Lewiston.
Yeah.
We'll chat after.
Okay.
It was so cute, so well maintained. I wanna meet the owner so bad.
Yeah, it's surprising. If it's the one I'm thinking of, it looks very small from the outside.
We called it the Candy House.
The candy house, yes. I love it.
Even
Yeah.
their cabinets were labeled and organized.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
sweet.
Yeah, very.
I love that house.
Now, what about when you're I'm just starting to call people and my friends and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying, things like, well, I might want a vacation home at some point, but I'm trying to decide, do I want a ski house, or do I want, my second home to be on a lake? I don't know, if you see anything like that, I guess, I might be interested. So that's
Get a lot of that.
I'm getting this loose stuff from people that's
Right.
oh yeah, I might be thinking, somebody who's having a second child, they live in the West End, they're looking for, something in Falmouth, at some point, but she's pregnant with her second child, but she knows that their house that they're currently living in isn't going to, for long term, maybe in a couple years, we're gonna have to sell our house.
Right.
But where are you looking, where are you going to look for, where would you like to move to?
Yeah.
Probably Falmouth, something like that. Alright, okay. So I'm getting that kind of information, but I don't know what to do with it.
Right.
Except,
Right.
and
And
I'm not
that
all
is-
set up on everything yet, so I'm just kinda.
Yeah,
Kind
and
of.
that's tough when we talk to our sphere, because it sounds like they wanna help you, they're like, yeah, we might do this if the price is right. You can set them up with a search in MLS and just drip them and just follow up with them.
Through command, saying, where they're at now, where they'd like to be.
Not in command, I haven't done it in command, but in main listings.
Oh, okay.
In
MLS, you can
MLS.
set them up with a portal that'll send houses.
Yeah, you can save a search.
Is that something you could show us how to do on the?
I can get in, right, if I can remember my password.
Yeah, safe searches
I
are
can give you mine.
really helpful in your
Oh, so every day you
Same
go
stuff
on
in,
your,
you
you
can set it
email,
on command.
you might have a
Making that link.
You can set them up so they
and
automatically
message
come
from,
out.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rick
Yeah.
did that with me a
You
year
can
or
set
so
up
ago.
Yeah.
He
A
sent
safe search
properties
for
I can
every
give you
day.
mine.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank
Call
you.
another-
Only because we don't remember, I don't remember passwords anymore, cause I don't have to, right?
Right.
Your computer
I've
says
heard
that, so.
I had to write mine down.
Alright, cause I just learned about that.
I don't see it on the
command.
computer, it's so strange.
That's flex on the glass.
The new CRM. Yeah, but.
I have that saved
I was
too.
getting all excited about it. Some people, and they're like, oh yeah, my agent
You get a new
does that.
computer, you're out of luck.
Does that to me, I get stuff all
And
the time.
maybe
I'm like,
if we're getting into
I
this, it
know.
would be helpful to
This is like
see
cutting edge
how
new stuff.
I set up a search, I can do the list.
It's not all
Let me see if I can remember mine.
Yeah.
Mine's pulling
So
out.
I have to point out in West Gardner, when I did a search, the 2 houses back to back
Yeah.
are your octagonal listing and the domed listing. It's like a hobbit house.
That's an old.
What's
That's-
going on in West Gardner?
It's
You got
strange
one
there.
empty.
They're both beautiful.
Thank you, I'm old school. I'm showing my age, right?
I want that house.
A lot of lakes.
Isn't it a cool house? Yeah.
I like both of them, the octagonal and the dome house. What's going on with the architects in West Garden?
All right, you wanna just come in?
Yeah, it's
and-
pulling up, yes.
I was gonna say, you can just, if you can enter it on here, then
That's fine.
don't save that because I don't know how to get
Just
out
hit
of
never.
that. This is the bizarre stuff, I don't know how this.
Mine's.
Like, I don't know why it doesn't show here, it only shows up there.
I can't see.
So I just type it, it's gonna go up?
You know, yeah,
Okay.
it will, yeah. Technology that I'm not familiar with.
Oh, it is type it.
And then,
Dot,
Dot.
019. I'll tell you.
Yeah. It's typing, so there you go.
Who's your architect?
Okay, sure.
Can you go me back to the file?
Yeah.
Don't save that one either.
Right?
We're
Okay.
live.
Alright, so I don't know where this is.
That's my goal now.
This really is bizarre. I obviously don't know this technology that they hooked us up with. Sounds silly, but.
You talking about command and all that?
No, this computer, the way, because you can't see it on this. So,
Yeah, hit never on that.
so how do I hit never? Hopefully it didn't save it. And then, yeah, technical difficulties, man. The mouse doesn't work.
I think it's a sign that we should break early.
It's a sign what?
I think it's a sign we should break early.
We might, yeah. We're definitely gonna get out early. I've got an hour and a half to talk.
Hey, you got your name tag?
This is not working.
Had it forever.
It's bummer.
Gonna get better
I
about
didn't know who you were till I saw it. No, there are.
Obviously, this is not working at all.
Yeah, it's a lot to fill the head with.
Anyway, hold on. We can just have conversations, you know, what can I help you guys with? Like, what would be helpful? Is there anything that, you know, as you're lead generating, like you said, like your friend that is interested in that, I'd just set them up with a search and just let them know if they see anything, let you know. Those are tough though, because you wanna keep in contact with them, because they might have another referral. But, just do what you can. Maybe they'll buy something. You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you do on the flip side when you're working with buyers who have unrealistic expectations
Oh,
for what
let's
they're
talk
gonna
about
get
that
for the
for a
money?
second.
Okay, so as sellers, you know, you do a market analysis. You can do that with buyers too. And especially in a hot market, on the buying side right now, like buyers have to be quick and have they lost out on the property yet?
We're not there yet, but
Okay.
but I know already what
Yeah.
he wants to spend
Yep.
is gonna get him whole, you know?
So can they do more and they're just not there
That's
yet?
what I'm trying to gently you might wanna, just.
Right. What typically happens,
I don't
sometimes they have to
see
learn the
them.
hard way, right? They have to learn the hard way and they have to lose out on a property.
Yeah.
So this is something too, multiple offer situations, we're still seeing that a lot, right? So if you're representing a buyer and it's a multiple offer situation, how do you get them to put their, highest and best in? Like, you hit them with, they act on emotion, right? So what is the price that if you tomorrow don't get this house, what price, would you say it wasn't meant to be? Definitely that. And there are, I'm seeing multiple offers everywhere still, if it's priced right.
Yeah.
So there's a pool of buyers, so you have to let those buyers know that they're competing. So.
I don't know, but since you've been, your experience in this place come out wrong, but how do you pick up on the seller's bullshit meter?
Yeah.
So, you know, like, oh, we can't accept this offer because there's just a lot of action going on. What sends up your red flag, like, we are the offer, and there is not, you're bullshitting me, but we really can't say that. But-
Yeah.
Right,
So
right.
what are the keywords?
So you wanna get to motivation, and twofold, like if you're getting a lot of activity on the property, but you've got one offer.
Well, they won't tell you how many offers.
Oh, you mean from the buyer, you're representing the buyer.
You're representing the buyer, you've made an offer, your seller's like, you know, wouldn't accept the offer, but is giving you a little, you know that you're probably the only offer. What are some of the signs that you've had where the seller is bullshitting?
So I may be naive in this, but National Association of Realtors, your ethics course, an agent shouldn't be telling you that there's an offer if there's not another offer. Like if they say you're in a multiple offer situation,
And you're not.
I wanna believe that that truly you are, because otherwise, that's an ethics.
Well, and that's
issue.
painting a
So, and I don't run into that often, but, you know,
I heard
hopefully.
someone said there was a backup buyer and I didn't believe him.
No.
He was also being a real.
I was gonna say, tread lightly around that agent.
I am.
Yeah. Yeah, because, you know, like, in my heart, I just, like, I don't ever say I have another even if I have a verbal offer, you know, or an offer that's coming in, I don't have the offer yet, and things change, so I'm not gonna say I have that offer unless I actually have that offer. You know, I might let the agent know, listen, you know, the activity's been good, and this agent says they're gonna make an offer, but I don't have it yet. You know, that's an even playing ground, like, I'm being honest. Like, the agent said they were sending an offer, I haven't seen it yet, so I'm not gonna, you know, commit to that. If it comes in, we'll let you know. As long as you have permission from your seller to give that information. So, and even if you do that at the time of listing, you know, you check the box that say you can let people know that they're in a multiple offer situation. I always ask the seller before I give that information, cause you don't know if something changed, you know, and sometimes that does backfire on you. Some people don't wanna be in a multiple offer situation, but I tell people, usually, if they really want the property, they'll give their highest and best. But, you know, if they're not that serious, they might back out, so we can't really feel bad about that if we let them know that they're in a multiple offer situation, cause they probably weren't our buyer anyway, we might have, you know, had something go wrong during inspections that you couldn't negotiate or whatever. So, does that make sense? Hopefully that answered your question.
It did.
Yeah, okay, good.
What about that buyer that does have that I can only spend this much? This is what I can spend. And you've spent about a month showing them properties under, right at, a little bit over, like really respecting the fact that this is what they can spend.
Yep.
Every single, I mean, especially when it's a lower budget, this is what you can get. And
Been there so many times.
And nothing,
Yeah.
nope, not for this, nope, not for that. I've had the conversation, this is what your budget will get you. And it's been, you know, and I'm checking in twice a week with this person and staying on top of sending her everything that's coming on the market in the area she's looking.
Right, and she doesn't like anything that you're finding properties, it's just that she doesn't like them.
Right, oh yeah. I mean, I've probably like over a dozen.
Yeah.
In her price range, and there's always something.
So it's spring, so there's, like, everybody waits till spring, right? Like, I've been lead generating right along, and so many people, you can't get them over that hump, they're not listing until spring. So, we know that there's gonna be a flood of inventory, like, it's a big list month, like April will be huge. So, you know, I would prep her for that this is the best time of year for you, because this is when we're gonna have the most number of listings. If she doesn't find anything in that time, you know, I'd keep her on the search, but maybe she's not an A buyer.
Well,
you know, maybe she's not.
And that's what I'm getting, like, but because the house, like, showing houses with this person is, I mean, it's an hour at every showing. And it's like, are we looking to buy or are we looking just for funsies?
Yeah, the looky-loos.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she's bringing a whole crew with her.
Right,
and,
right.
She's
well, And let's face it, just like the sellers, there's some you don't wanna work with, there might be some buyers that you don't wanna work
I'm just
with.
trying to figure out
As you get
when-
busier and busier.
I'll give her the month of April, and if it's still like this, I'm done.
Yeah, and just let her know, obviously
I
there's.
don't, because it's, I mean, my Saturday, I'm a single mom with a 10-year-old son, she's taking my Saturdays and Sundays away from me, so unless I'm gonna, and I just, and she's bringing other people that are taking pictures of houses and then sending it back to their, and I'm like, what are we doing? Oh, well, my father's looking to buy, and I got frustrated, and I handed her my card and said, okay, tell your dad to call me.
Right, absolutely, you
Because I
should take
don't-
advantage of
I
those
don't-
opportunities.
I don't work for free,
Right.
so.
Right, yeah,
Like,
I
I'm
mean,
just getting
I guess,
frustrated.
yeah, if she's looking and not making offers, you know, I would go to her motivation. Again, why is it important for you to buy?
Yeah.
Another thing that you can use with her right now is that, yes, they're saying interest rates are going to stay the same, like 2019, they're predicting the flat. They can't stay down there forever.
Right.
Eventually, they're going to go up, and as they rise, her buying power is gonna be affected. So,
And then, you know, and let her know April is like tomorrow, so
yeah,
let's
the
keep her
number
hopes
one
up for
list
this
month.
and,
Yeah, but I wouldn't, I mean, you know, you can just let her know, I'll set up a search and I'll, you know, you keep getting properties if there's something that you wanna see, but she shouldn't be taking up all day of your time and not.
she also tried to find out how she could buy a house without a real estate agent too. Kind of sneaky.
Right, and why does she wanna do that?
They don't save the money, the buyers do.
Told you what was
Why
that?
does she wanna do that? Why does she wanna,
Just think they
do
do.
you know why
I
she?
don't know, that's a funny situation. She reached out to the lender that I hooked her up with, and then he reached out to me letting me know that conversation was, you know,
Right,
what happened was she had a friend that wanted to, like, hey, I'll sell you my house. Needs a lot of work done, but, you know.
right, and sometimes those situations work out, but
Yeah.
not always,
And that's-
but,
and
and that might be a
more power to
blessing
her.
for you, you know, like
I
if she
know,
buys
right?
it.
Move on.
Yeah, I've spent,
Anyway.
yeah, I've spent a lot of hours running around with buyers and showing them houses, and they never buy anything, and it's just one of those things. As you get busier and busier, your time is gonna become more valuable to you, and you can limit those.
Well, and I feel like I'm almost, I don't mean to keep talking too much here, but
Yeah.
I almost feel like she's taking advantage of the fact that I'm a newer agent. Like, I know I'm a new agent, but I mean, I've been doing this since July, I've been in real estate school since last February, for crying out
Yeah.
loud, so I mean, I'm not stupid, I'm not, and plus I'm
Yeah, so maybe when she schedules something, just let her know, like, I only have X amount of time
Yeah.
to do this, set her expectation that you have another appointment.
Yeah.
And your other appointment can be with your son.
well, that's what exactly, that's what I did last week, I said,
Yeah,
you know, I've got
Yeah.
2 hours,
right.
so, and that, I mean, that's it.
Right, exactly, I've gotta be somewhere
Yeah.
else, and remind her of that when you're showing her property. Cause it's funny, because sometimes you get in so deep, you show this buyer so many property that you're like, they're gonna buy something, right?
And then they
Like,
don't.
and, but, you know, you don't wanna miss out on that closing, however, sometimes you could've done others, you know, and
It's, yeah.
sign up for
fine.
bold, get a lot of business.
No,
and
I've done
be able
bold.
to-
I did
You,
bold.
you did bold?
I already did bold, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
I did bold, I'm doing Ignite. Now I just wanna sell real estate. Like,
Right.
I'm over it.
Right.
I just wanna have some closing.
Right. I would say contacts,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I've already sold a house, I've done one
Yeah.
I've got one good transaction under my belt,
Yeah, there you go.
so,
Gain momentum.
yeah,
Real estate's a contact sport, right?
yeah.
The more
And it's
contacts you make.
I'm getting more and more. A lot of my sphere have been coming out of the woodwork,
Good.
like,
Those are the best, because
Oh.
if they're a referral, then.
it's awesome,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely, absolutely.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? Like anything else you wanna ask, or, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so, how, I don't know how to put this.
This is a safe space.
Yeah.
It's not like that, it's not like that. There's just so many thoughts, like,
I know,
it's coming from
exactly.
so many different directions that like,
Yeah,
but I guess the gist of it is, how do you do a CMA without seeing a property first? Like, going inside and looking around it?
okay, good question. If it's been in MLS and you can see the pictures,
Sure.
you ask the seller if they've made any changes,
Right.
and then they tell you. If it's been in MLS, like sometimes I don't always go with a market analysis to the
Yeah.
first appointment, and then I just look at the house and I go from there.
Okay.
However, sometimes if it's been in MLS and and you can do it beforehand, you still have to go and walk through the house.
Yes.
But if you, when you're walking through, you're like, geez, I missed the mark on the CMA. I don't mention that I brought it.
Right,
I just keep it to myself and I let them know I schedule another appointment to get back with them.
so does it also kind of depend on how long ago it was in the MLS? The reason I ask is.
Oh, yeah, it does actually.
They're always talking about bringing the CMA to the listing appointment. But it's like,
You know,
when we thought about listing our house a couple years ago, and we had a few agents come in.
Yep,
One came in with the CMA.
yep,
One came to see us, meet with us, walk through the house, and then
Yep.
she came back a couple days later to go through the CMA.
Yep.
So, I guess it's just situational.
it's how comfortable you in, and it depends, like if I go on a listing appointment in Turner, I live in Turner.
Yeah.
I pretty much know the inventory. What's that?
The Bum Turner?
I do.
I
Yep.
got several friends that live out
Yeah,
there.
in Turner. So it all depends on that, how comfortable you are. But I've done CMAs and not shared them
Right.
because of that
Okay.
reason. Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing to consider too is the CMAs are really based on the location, the market in that particular location,
Yeah.
bedrooms, bathrooms. I mean,
Yeah.
the only thing you're really gonna find out when you go into an appointment is custom features and condition.
Right.
And you can adjust the CMA based on that. If you say, well, you're similar to these properties, but the condition isn't really correct. You should consider.
But then they have that
based-
number. I'd
They
caution you
have-
on
They
that.
have that number
Like,
too.
I just make sure that they understand if you went through and redid the flooring, if
Right.
you painted, this is where your market analysis would be.
Exactly.
And sometimes, like with that analysis, because I'm bringing all the data, I have, and if I'm unsure of it, I'll print more detail sheets. Like if there's only 10 houses that sold in that town in the last 6 months, then I'll bring them all. And then I'll go through them together with them and kind of do the market analysis at the table.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this has a 2-car garage, yours doesn't, so that's a $10,000 comp. And kind of work through it, and you can kind of set the price at the table without doing the formal CMA. Then you can do it later and send it to them
Yeah.
for their initials. The other thing that I've done is done listing paperwork and not filled in the price yet, which you don't have a listing agreement if you don't fill out all the fields if you don't have them. But then at least in their mind, they've committed to you, so that you'll do the market analysis and then you'll decide on the price, and then you just fill in the price and have them initial it. So that's another way that you can do it too. But I try to do one-step listing appointments most of the time, just because you can go on more. But sometimes you can't. Sometimes you got that unique property, you don't know what you're walking into, and like I did one that I had the market analysis all done. It was like, a 30-year-old house, and I pulled in and the roof shingles were all like peeling, it needs a roof. So in that case, I don't share the CMA at that time because I don't want them to say I can get that and I'll deal with the roof later. It's unrealistic, if buyers drive by and see the roof, they might not look at it. It's overpriced because of the roof. So try to deal with that at first.
I have a question. So another, I was just thinking about another contact that I had just yesterday. I went to go pick up my kids at school, and I was talking to one of the moms who said, because they live out in Brunswick, and my kids go to school at Wainfleet. So, so anyway, I know that they wanted to move closer.
Mm-hmm.
I had heard that, and I had heard that Liam was Liam, the kid in the class. Is moving.
I thought that was an
closer.
agent at first.
No. Liam is moving closer. Just heard this from the kids,
Yeah.
And I was like, I may as well just ask her, with
Right.
so I hear you're moving closer, as we're waiting for our kids to come out of school.
Sure.
And she's like, yeah, I mean that's the plan, but she's like, we just refinished our whole house in Brunswick, and but she just said that we wanna buy some land. My husband doesn't want to see any homes. He wants 10 acres, and we're probably only gonna find it in probably Freeport or I don't know. She's like maybe Cumberland, and then I guess we probably want to build a house. We just refinished this old house. They just moved from Texas. They refinished this whole old house, and we just want all new. But it seems like builders, and it's probably going to take forever. And that's what she's filling me with all this information, right?
Yeah.
And then I said, are you working with anybody right now? And she's like, yeah, but I mean the 6 months are probably almost up. So, so she's like, you know, I don't know, we're just, all this stuff is toying around in our heads right now, so.
Yeah.
She's like,
So watch for her to expire.
So
And when she
it's like-
expires, yeah.
So that's what
contact
would be
her,
the
yeah.
next step to do?
Yeah, yeah, because having a conversation, like you.
Just that
you
random
know,
conversation, I'm like, what should I, I'm like
Right.
thinking in my head, what do I do next?
Right.
Like, what do I email her, like, I don't even have like,
Right.
I don't have a
But if-
KW email address yet, I don't have a business
Right.
card, I don't have anything right now.
But if she's listed, you don't wanna interfere with brokerage
No.
relationships either, so wait for it to expire and then contact her again. If
Okay.
they contact you, that's fine. Like if she
Okay.
reached out to you again because she's contacting you,
Yeah.
you're okay in having a conversation. You can't just list it until that either expires or terminates.
Okay,
So,
alright,
that's what I would do. Wait
Okay.
for that, cause you wanna be careful. I have, a listing appointment I'm going on tomorrow, and, it's an agent, she saw our signs around, so she just called, and, I set the appointment with her for actually today, and I pulled it up to see if it's ever been in MLS, and it's active. It's an active listing, so she reached out to me, so I called her, and I said, hey, you're an active listing with this agent, and she's like, she was supposed to terminate that or she was supposed to take that off MLS back in January. I'm like, well, she didn't, so I can still meet with you, I can share how my team sells homes, but I can't list it until you expire,
Oh, wow.
or you end that relationship with her. So, yeah, so that's kinda interesting.
Mm.
So for 2 months now, this seller has assumed her house isn't on the property, you know, on the market,
Yeah.
and it's out there as an active listing.
Ah.
So,
so that's showing days on market too, right?
days on market, plus she hasn't had any showing requests, right? Because
Right,
she hasn't
yeah, so
worked
that's
with
not
an
good,
agent, so-
that's not good for her,
No.
doesn't look good for her house.
Right, exactly. So that's kind of like at a standstill until she figures that out. Actually, I'm gonna meet with her and go over everything, but she knows I can't touch it until she's expired.
So I probably should have asked that woman, when does it expire?
You could.
I mean, I don't wanna be too pushy either.
Set
You
up
know
a
what I mean?
set up a search to yourself with just that address.
Okay,
Just search the property,
okay.
cause you'll find it as an active listing.
Mhm.
Save the search and the recipient is you. So that at midnight,
yeah.
when it expires, you'll get an email the next
Okay.
morning. So.
That's smart, that's good.
Say that again.
That was a good idea.
So if
Yeah,
you're
very
watching
good.
a property, you can set up a search in MLS just like you do for clients, you can set it up for yourself. So just, like if there's a particular property, set it up, find it, it's active, save the search, and put yourself as the recipient to the email, to the saved search.
So what information will it send you, just when it expires?
Or when they have a price change or it goes pending.
Oh, okay, anything
Like,
pertinent.
as long as you select all that stuff, like you have to select the status of, just highlight them all. And then you know if they withdraw it, if they terminate it, you get the
Sold
information.
it.
Exactly. Yep, yep, so you can do that, yes.
Do you have different, I have a couple, buyers from Florida.
Yeah,
Are your expectations from people out of state a little different?
no, I think it's more motivation than anything. And that's true for whether the buyer's out of state or in state, right? You wanna figure out what their motivation is. And always make sure they're pre-approved, right?
That's hard to push people out, like, they're
It
from
is.
Florida, and I'm like, really need to get that pre-approval.
Do they come here to search for homes, or are they doing it?
Fairly, one's coming, and the others are just sort of getting their act together.
Yeah, I've sold listings, cause right now I'm with the Manchester team, so I only work with sellers, I don't work with buyers anymore. I've sold properties in the last couple of years with like a walkthrough, a FaceTime iPhone, you know, the agent walks through and they sell and they see it, then you kinda hold your breath during the final walkthrough when they're here, right?
Cool.
Cause it's like, hopefully they like it,
So
but
you do like a FaceTime, like.
I've had buyer agents do that recently, so that's a
Probably what I'll end up
tactic.
doing.
Yeah, you can do like a preview of the home and just let the agent know that you're doing that, because you don't wanna, some sellers might not want that. Like I had one that the agent called me, wanted to do a FaceTime walkthrough with their buyer, and I let my seller know, and she's like, I'm not comfortable with that. She just felt weird about it, and she had a couple of specific reasons for that, so we
Were they
had to.
legit? Like,
There were. She had some stuff in the property that she was concerned about. That, okay, this buyer is just having this agent walk through. Is he just casing the property and then, like it's they don't have a record of who's in it, you know what I mean? Like, the agent, of course, but, you know, it was just, it made her uncomfortable.
Sure.
And she had a good reason, so I called the agent, I'm like, hey, my seller's a little uncomfortable. What do you know about this buyer? How long have you been working with them? Are they legit? You know what I mean? Like, you just ask questions, and then he gave some very good information. I went back to the seller and she allowed it. But it was, you know, you have to make sure that you're doing what's right for your client. And never speak for your clients, you know that, right? From real estate school. Like, you know, I have agents all the time. My buyer will never do that. I'm like, well, have you run a buyer yet? Like, just get back to me, you know, so.
And that gets tricky too when you're working with a friend, because I'm working with a friend right now.
Yep.
A first time home buyer, and I have explained to her crystal clear.
Yep.
When we're talking real estate, we're talking your transaction. I am not your friend, I am your agent. I've got to let you make the decisions. I'm here to guide you, but, you know, and that's a tricky line sometimes, you know what I mean? Because.
Right, like, would you buy this house? Like that type of
yeah,
question?
well, what do you think, like,
Yeah.
what do you think the house? And I mean.
And you're representing her as a client.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So tell her, I'd tell her like I would anybody else.
Well, I did this thing last night, cause
Yeah.
we were talking about stuff last night, and I said, okay, I'm gonna put Jackie Friend hat on now real quick.
Yeah,
The lavender's gonna look gorgeous out there, okay, hats off. Real
Yeah.
estate agent,
Yeah.
I can't make this decision for you.
right, you can only advise, right?
Right,
You can't
so.
decide, and I let people know that, and that's the
Right.
same, like if you have a seller, like I've had sellers before that, I know they should take the offer,
Oh, yeah.
but they're like, no, I don't wanna do it, it's only been on, you know, like somebody asked that question earlier, it hasn't been on the market long, I think it was from the buyer perspective, but I've had sellers and I'm just like, you know, I'm like, this is the, you know, only offer we've had in 3 months, and
Right.
you know, if you pass this up, like, let's look at what your holding costs are, like, what are your taxes, what is your mortgage, cause this particular property was vacant, that I'm thinking of, so it's gonna, so you don't wanna take we were $1,000 apart, and they were like, they had gone back and forth so much, that they were like, they put their feet in the sand and they said, no more, and, I'm like, $1,000, like, I knew, they have a mortgage on the property, they have taxes, it was gonna cost them like $3,000 a month, and I'm like, hey, you know, I know you're at the end of your rope, and that you're really frustrated, but we're there, and they did it, and we closed, so it's just, you have to go back to that motivation, like, I understand where you're coming from, I get it, I'm on your side, however, have you thought about this, I have to be like your advocate, have you thought about this? And what that means, and, you know, cause sometimes, but if she had said, no, I'm not going that extra 1,000, that's her, like, I can't decide that for her, so, would I have been really bummed? Yeah, because I knew that, you know, yeah, but emotions come into it on that side of it too, so, people get emotional and can't do it.
So, can I ask you a question, and I think I can ask this out loud, I don't think I'm disclosing anything
'Kay.
important.
I don't know what my seller will take for that property, no.
No. Unfortunately, my buyer didn't want the property, which drove me crazy. My friend who I'm working with.
Okay.
She found a property, multi-unit in
Yep.
Houston, right on Sabata Street.
Yep.
Loved it. Like, first one we looked at, we went and looked at other ones. Every
Yep.
time we went and looked at another one, she loved it even more.
Yep.
I was told that the seller was motivated. The house has been on the market for 219 days now. There's not been not one price drop at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's listed for an extremely fair price. I'm not saying that it's over, but at all. I think it's very fair, especially
Okay.
I did my CMA on it too.
Yep.
My CMA just completely showed me that I was right on that.
Mm-hmm.
We came in with we put an offer on it.
Mm-hmm.
Counter offer came back, and I really think the counter offer is super duper fair.
Mm-hmm.
My buyer wants to try one more offer, but I'm getting nervous because they're ready to rent out the unit that my buyer wants to live in. They're ready to.
So you know they're X amount of dollars off. So that they're like 10,000 off or whatever, 5,000. There's a number. You're countering back and forth.
Yeah, we countered with a certain number back.
Yep.
It was a strong offer. I'm not going to say that.
Yep.
And then the offer that came back was can I say that out loud what the offer was that came back? I mean, I don't think it's,
Yeah, it's fine,
Okay.
we don't have a
We have no
problem.
idea
know
who
what
this is
an
or
idea
what
is.
the
Okay,
property is,
okay.
so.
so full asking price came back,
Yep.
but with $6,500 in seller.
So the seller came down 6,500.
Right, exactly.
Yep,
I think we should go for it.
buyer's just throwing it in.
So,
So this is what I would do.
I'm listening, I'm only.
Her lender, call her lender.
Yep, and I'm
okay.
friends with her too, and she's really
Okay.
good.
So call her lender, let her know that you made an offer, that you're $6,500 apart. And ask her to counsel the buyer on how much that is over 30 years. Because I'm willing to bet it's like $20.
Well, and
So-
that's exact, and I did that already, I had
Yep.
Shelley call my buyer and
Yeah.
explain her all that, but my buyer's like, I mean, it can't hurt to ask for this amount.
So you have to do what your client wants, right?
I do,
Yeah.
but am I allowed to say, but it might hurt to ask because I think we're gonna piss off the seller.
Right.
And she might go, never mind, I'm just gonna rent it out.
Right. You can advise her of that.
That's what I feel like is gonna, I don't have any.
Say, I'll do what you want me to do, like, you're the one that,
Is
I'll do
bottom
whatever you
line,
want, but this is what I'm afraid of, and this is what, I'm hearing from the listing agent side, and are you gonna be okay if the seller gets frustrated with you and says, I'm just gonna rent it?
Forget it.
Right,
Because it was literally actively advertised on Craigslist as of last week to rent out.
yep,
So, and she's, okay, thank you, good.
How long has she been looking?
I mean, not long, but she's looking at, for multi-units in Lewiston, Auburn.
well,
Yeah.
For
and that's the
under-
other thing I've thought of a
Look at
couple
that
of
price
times
budget.
while we've been talking, is that when you first meet with a buyer, it's okay to set the expectation that, on average, we show people 6 houses and then they make a decision. So that they have that 6 in their mind.
And I showed her about 6.
Well, and you might show them 10 or 12, but once they hit that number 6,
Yeah.
and I've done this, it works. They feel bad. Like, I'm so sorry, you're showing me so many houses.
Yeah.
I know I'm above what you normally do. No problem, that's
Right.
fine. But if you hear somebody talking about real estate, you can pay me back by giving me a referral.
Exactly.
Right? And then, I've showed buyers 30 houses before they
Oh
found
my
something.
God, don't
so.
tell me that.
We're
Yeah,
all
$6,500
lunch
is
at 25.
$33.
They're good
Yeah.
friends, right?
So, just.
That was years ago. I wouldn't do that anymore.
So at least we got to see lots of houses.
No one here is from Lewiston, Auburn, are they? No, yeah.
I've been there once in my life.
It's such a lovely spot.
Lewiston, Auburn.
Well,
Lewiston-
not Lewiston, Auburn, but this house specifically in Lewiston, Auburn.
Okay. Well, and
I live in Lewiston.
I'll tell you, Lewiston, Auburn is attractive because of the prices, right?
Holy smokes.
It's a different
If this
market.
house was-
Like, my average sales price is 180.
If this house was in Portland, it would be a $400,000 home.
Right, right,
Hands down.
right.
And if it was in a Gunkwit, it would be nice.
Right, exactly. And
Exactly.
location. And you'll have sellers say that to you. Oh, you're kidding me, like, if it was in Portland, it'd be worth this, but it's not.
Well, that's it, but we're not in Portland,
Right,
so, I mean, if
right.
it was in New York City, it would probably be worth
Aroostook County.
We're not in New York.
Exactly, Aroostook County had to be worth the money, right?
Oh,
So-
I don't know, strike that, I don't know.
So people pay an awful lot of money for a home just to avoid a 30 or 45-minute commute.
They do.
That's crazy to me,
Yeah.
but.
I don't know, I did a 45 or 50-minute commute to work as a teacher last fall.
Yeah.
I quit.
Yeah.
I mean, part of it was because being a teacher is a 50-hour-a-week job if you're really
Thanks
not
for
doing a
coming.
good job, which is how I did it. But
Oh, you're
it
welcome.
makes a huge difference to do that.
Yeah.
Angela.
Wow.
Angela and Jackie.
Jackie, okay. Oh,
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you too. Yeah,
We're in kind of the same area, so.
okay.
Cause I do a lot, I'm trying to get closely down here, but I'm doing a lot of Lewiston, Auburn right now, cause I live there.
Yeah, that's true.
You live in
That's
Lewiston,
true.
Auburn?
It's not
Yeah.
5 days a
Here
week,
is in
50
Lewiston,
weeks a
Okay.
year.
Worked at Purdy's for a long time, you didn't know why?
Yeah.
Awesome.
26
There you go.
hours a
Do you
year
know
on my
Tony
car
Ferrara?
just to go back.
She used to be an agent with Keller Williams, and she worked at, or she may still, I don't know, Pedro's. So, she started out that way.
Oh my, I think.
And she got a lot of business from her.
If it's who I'm thinking of, I think I do know her.
Yeah, she's at Main Source now, but.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah, all my pretty friends, they're like, hold on, what? I know.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so.
Keep that going.
One spot.
They're the easiest. It's easier to keep
Oh,
a
oh,
client
yeah.
than
Oh.
create a new
Yeah.
one, right? So
Yeah.
That sucks.
keep asking for the referrals.
Well, it's good to put face with
Yes,
a name. 'Cause I-
same here. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? We're getting done early, but that's okay, right?
Fine.
We can go lead generate.
I'm meeting with Heather for a technology help. I've got several
I
questions.
should probably too, yeah.
I can go on to command,
Yeah.
nothing happens.
Yeah.
The screen pops up, I click
Are
on
you on your
there,
computer or on the?
on my computer,
Now I'll have.
command,
Yeah,
nothing at all.
Heather will
works.
assist. Heather will help you with
Yeah.
that.
Great.
Yeah.
Nobody talked to any of my
She
was like, oh, I work for Amelia on
All right.
I don't care
Because you
about
wanna make sure they're compliant.
Yeah.
Right,
I don't care, like, we're testing it.
Right,
He said
yeah.
it's up to,
It's up to you.
you know, and I don't care. I've been in sales for 22 years, never had a fixed wrong.
Right, it's a personal preference, I mean, back when I started, they said you need your picture, so I did it.
Yeah.
I've seen, you don't see too often, but you do see them without pictures, so.
And I've seen some road signs have pictures, some don't.
Yeah.
All right, I'll text you on Friday, yeah.
And then again, personal, I'm glad my picture's not on it, so, yeah. I don't know what that is.
Let's meet
Oh, it's the
tonight.
tech.
Oh, it's tech guy.
Let's go, let's get on the.
It's actually
Nice to meet you, Matt, nice to meet you. Yeah, no, that's fine, I'm really bad at that, secret agent.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, see you later, nice to meet you, I hope I provided a little bit of value.
Yeah, I think when people share like what they,
Awesome.
their viewpoints and what they've been through, like you, I find that the most helpful.
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
I was like,
She's in that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you know, having Jackie be able to ask, like, what would I do in this situation? You know?
Yeah.
Right, it's all
Right.
knowledge,
Right.
yeah, success leaves clues, so, yeah.
Lots of
You want me to bring that up in
Yeah.
or if I'm going there?
Right.
So.
Oh,
Or
this
is
is
that
Joe.
the sign?
You know what, I'm
Did you do
gonna,
a sign?
Take a picture of it.
I'm gonna take a picture of it and then I'm gonna email you guys all that, I don't know where that ended up when I brought, but
Not on it, anything like that.
I was gonna email you that and,
ended up on that.
Let's let Matt know on Friday what's actually telling us.
yeah, and just let Joe know that we're done early, but I didn't really have our slideshow, so I just moved it.
Yeah, no worries.
20 producers and said.
8:30, 10:30 is perfect.
I'm going on a fishing expedition this weekend for
For
Fisbo.
clients or like real
For
fishing?
Fisbo, the
Okay.
guy
Yeah,
has his house overpriced
Yeah.
by 100.
Chris and already.
Oh, fun.
Oh, he's doing
Good luck.
You know, it gives you the experience even if nothing comes out of it, yeah, so, but, and going with a lot of comps, like prove to him why he's
Who
over.
want that.
And let him set the
So,
price
there's
in that case, like,
like a
okay, so
big
this is
push for,
everything that's
you know,
sold in the
just
last
$1 million
year,
home, $1 million
Yeah.
plus.
above, like, I don't know what price
So,
range he's in.
Also, like, I guess in your marketing,
He's asking like
should be something where you're.
Okay,
not just-
so everything that's
And he's
sold in
not-
this,
yeah,
Well,
because otherwise,
Right. Obviously thinks he can get that.
you know, can't just leave it
Hanging around him.
right.
No.
So sometimes I print the 8
No.
photo listing in color so that they can see the inside too.
Yeah.
And just like, this is what this one sold for, have you been in this house? Do you know this house? Yes, no, alright, yes, how does it compare to yours?
No.
You know, no, well, how does it look compared to yours? You know, it's got 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, just like yours, you know, do the similarities and have him figure out, like, don't tell him, cause you won't get anywhere with a first time owner, but if you let him see the comps and this is what the market's doing, maybe he'll come up with that scenario. Or say, I think you're right if you did this, 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 and this.
Yeah, my streets, I'm not sure if you do that, you'd have to do a
Well,
lot.
bulldoze it.
What is the house up, yeah.
It's a little small and then.
I do it for the insurance, you know.
Yeah, don't ever say that. If somebody says that, I go like this. Look at that. You don't wanna hear that.
It's just funny, cause I mean, they're usually overpriced some, but I was like,
Right.
This is a lot.
Well, they're unrealistic and, yeah,
Because
and
my-
sometimes that
my
happens with
sphere of
expireds
influence
too.
is full of
Like, some
realtors.
people will just take listings to put their sign up,
Brokers.
and
More
I'm guilty of that, I used to do it, but not anymore.
That's
Like,
what they all
it's
do.
stressful for me, if I have to tell somebody,
We
you
laugh,
know,
we're like,
like,
you know, it's like
I don't
every
have any
5 people we
activity.
know, we do
I don't like
like
that.
five, 10 minutes.
I'd rather them know, so, Awesome.
Yeah, I fully expect to get nowhere with them, but
I gotta go get a home.
Yeah,
never
you
know.
know, you never know, build a rapport.
maybe in a few months he'll be like,
Yeah.
damn.
Yeah, and let him know that, and if
Maybe
he,
she was right.
if he likes you and wants to list with you, like, but he wants to stay at
I
that
gotta
price,
figure out
just say,
when.
you know, you want me to be honest with you, right?
And I
Like,
gotta call Intermed.
I can't sell it for that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I mean, there's no
Oh,
way.
you're welcome, thank you.
I'll call it now and find out.
You know, I'd love to get you that price, but just what the market is right now, you're not gonna get that price. So I'm not doing you any justice, or your home being on MLS, the days on market. And point out, like, when it's first on the market, that's when you get the most amount of eyes. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
The house 5 years ago for less than
It's like day
$300,000.
5.
I don't even know what the price is.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, they
sometimes
kinda
that
do.
happens, but you can't, and I tell people you can't underprice a home. Like, whenever I get that, like, we feel like we didn't price it high enough. That's not true, because, you know, like, if you get multiple offers, then usually the multiple offers show you where,
Yeah.
you know, don't feel bad about that. And I mean, I had to sell, the whole family was talking to them. Like, they're saying I didn't get enough, and they're saying I sold it too fast, it should have taken longer, and, you know, you have to talk people off that cliff constantly, like, it's all about price, and that's it. And you can't underprice it, because the market's gonna set the price.
Third-party mouthpieces.
Whew.
That's
Yeah,
what
right till
I refer
closing,
to.
sometimes that happens.
Everyone's
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't be face to face with that, right? Like, the people they're talking to them, so they're like, you go back and then say something else, they're like, you know, and then you come back and.
And ultimately, it's their decision if they're gonna
Exactly.
sell it for
Yep,
that price. So, I mean, you give them your advice,
absolutely, yep,
they have to take ownership of that. I mean,
Right.
that's,
right. Yeah, and I mean, if it's a unique property and I really don't know where the price is gonna be, you know, and sometimes that happens, just like appraisals, you know, but if you find that right buyer, maybe it'll work. You test it, but you just let them know upfront, like, set the expectation. This is like throwing a dart at a dartboard, where's it gonna land? Like, until we test it, we don't know, so, but price changes all, that's one thing I know.
Rick explained that he really focuses on friends and family and his sphere of influence, and
Sure.
he's done a little bit of cold calling. He was very honest with the whole class here that, you know, he's not one to go on 2 hours a day and just make cold calls.
Hey, he told us not to say that.
Oh, did he?
He did.
Well, don't rat me
Throw him
out.
right under the bus.
I'm a
Well,
good
no, he's selling houses right and left.
A good
Yeah, he's
secret
doing
keeper.
all right.
Yeah,
Unless they're
he's
recording
doing
us.
But now on social media,
Mhm.
say you've got people you went to high school years ago.
Yeah.
You were good buddies, but you know, time and
Yeah,
goes by and you kind of lose contact.
sure.
I would feel kind of cheesy just making a phone call out of the blue to somebody I hadn't talked to in 20-something years. Would going on Facebook and just sending a little message to
I would.
to break the ice,
Sure.
you know, kind
Yeah, and
of.
just let them know what you're doing, and I'm excited about it, and, you know, being uncomfortable is when you grow, right?
Yeah.
So if you get out of your comfort zone, so that doesn't feel quite comfortable to do that, however, if you did it, you might be surprised, like, they might be glad to hear from you.
Okay.
I did that, like, the same thing. You know, I'd been in the business 15 years. When I was first in the business, I didn't stay in touch with people.
Yeah.
I didn't know to. I wasn't with Keller Williams, and I didn't follow up with people. So when I first took Bold, you know, they're having you call Sphere and old clients and all of that, and it was uncomfortable calling those people because I sold them a house 10 years ago and I haven't talked to them since, right?
Yeah.
But then you have to think, like, the way I set my mind for that, like, a lot of times those conversations go well, and they're happy to hear from you, and so what if they're not?
Yeah.
If they're not making a mortgage or whatever you're, you know.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
like, it's, you know, you have to get through a lot of no's to get to the yeses, so.
25 years ago, I took a job with Prudential Insurance,
Yep.
selling life insurance.
Yep.
And they were even more focused on friends and families and call them, get meetings with them.
Right.
Even more so than real estate.
Wow.
And I was, 25 years ago, I just very stubborn, very resistant to doing that. I
Yep.
lasted 3 months and I was gone. You know, but I did
Yeah.
learn a little something out of it.
Yeah.
And I did do cold calls and actually made appointments. It was easier for me to speak to people that I didn't know than it was.
It's funny that you say that because I'm that same way. It's easier, and a lot of it is, you know, sometimes you have those conversations, like, I don't know this agent's name, but she mentioned, like, they said, well, if this comes up, we might buy this, or this might happen, and then you feel like you have to follow up with that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't wanna do that, like, it's not a solid, you know, like, it's not the now business.
Yeah.
But the more you do it, it's, you know, it is worth it. You
get
just,
more
but I'm the same
close.
way. It's easier for me to talk to an expired than it is to call somebody I haven't talked to in 10 years.
Like, it'd be much easier for me to hand a business card to somebody sitting at a crack of a beer with a stranger. It'd
Right.
be easier for me to do that than to call someone for 30 years ago from high
Right,
school.
right.
But, you know,
But it's not gonna pay off as fast.
yeah.
That's what you have to think about.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
what's gonna make you money right now?
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Like, the people you know are more apt to
No, I
use
was-
you or do business with you than someone you just met.
We made phone calls here last Monday.
Awesome.
And I only.
Was that uncomfortable?
Well, not too bad. I just asked my friends, I said,
Yeah.
hey, look, just bear with me while I'm reading the script to you. And
Oh, you did?
And a couple of them said, Paul, you sound like you're reading.
Yeah.
You know, just be yourself. Just tell them, hey, I'm working with Keller Williams. I'm
Yeah.
really excited about it. And
Right.
that was their advice to me.
Yeah.
And I know the more you do
But I
the
wonder
script.
if you didn't tell them that you were reading a script, would they have known?
Yeah, they would have.
They would have?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times that happens too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like part of Bold, anyone that's taken Bold, if there's a script that they use to
Yeah.
get business in class.